Speaking of, we did also see another show before Freelance Wrestling. Was it GCW or what was the show? CSW.
CSW.
CSW, sorry, mixing up my W's. And we saw Matt Cardona in his indie god form. I think
Whoa,
before that, I don't
whoa.
think I've seen him since his Zack Ryder days. If I was talking about like in person
That was my
wrestling
first
matches.
time ever seeing him in person.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, I know Chris, you and me have seen him plenty of times, like during the 2010s, like when he was Zack Ryder. He was on a bunch of dark matches. He was a United States champion at one point. We saw him in a number of things. I mean, an Edgehead. He was also, I think, tagging with I forgot what the other guy's name is, the other Edgehead, but he was they were tag team champs like what 3 years ago in WWE or something like that, 4 years ago, which was wild. But yeah, so our first segment is an interesting story. This came from Busted Open Radio. Jericho had an interview about his match with Cardona, which is already passed. It happened during a Ring of Honor show, but Jericho had an interesting comment, and I'll just first read the transcript of what he said, and then we can kind of open the floor for discussion. So essentially, he said that Matt Cardona reminds him a lot of Bret Hart. So he said just the fact that we are doing this is special. The fact that it's in Hammerstein with the vibe that is expected. I don't think anybody expected Matt Cardona to answer this challenge. He's not an AEW regular. We haven't seen him a whole lot. Chris Jericho being the Ring of Honor champion. 2 years I did it as the Ocho, and here we are again as the Nueve. There's a lot going on with Ring of Honor. There's a lot of potential television deals to be talked about and discussed. Ring of Honor has such a wrestling style. Wrestling style is selling out venues with a good story and two good characters that people want to see get in the ring. That's what we've done. I'm very happy with this build we've created the last 3 weeks. I don't think it could have gone better. I know ticket sales have pretty much doubled after this match was announced. We're going to sell out if we haven't already. It's going to be special just by the fact that we're there. I'm excited about it. Matt Cardona has done a good job of reinventing himself and recreating himself, and dare I say, he reminds me a lot of Bret Hart. Everything he does is very solid. It looks great. It's very meat and potatoes in the best way. Matt is not the type of guy who's going to do a moonsault off the top of the balcony, and neither am I. We'll leave that to the guys who do that. I expect we're going to beat the crap out of each other. He said something else. With a raucous crowd who are sick of Jericho proclaiming to be king of New York and coming to Hell's Kitchen in Bronx via Staten Island ferry. I said Jericho, who admitted he knows where Hell's Kitchen is. So he says that Matt Cardona reminds him of Bret Hart. And I guess I wanted to open it up to you guys. He said he's very solid and his move style is very meat and potatoes. David, what do you think when you think of that comparison? Do you feel like that's accurate or fair? Like, what can you envision any traits of Bret Hart's that you can potentially see in Matt Cardona from what you've seen from Matt
I
or
think
Zack Ryder?
I think a lot of it has to do with like his ability to sell, like even just like in the transitional phases of a match, like taking hits, like maybe taking a knee to the gut, like things like that. So I could kind of see that. Like one thing I noticed about Matt a lot was like even like his low impact falls, they sounded like high impact. Like like
Mm-hmm.
like I felt like it didn't feel like he was slapping the mat, but like the ring had a different thud every time he went down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like I think I feel
Kick or
like
punch.
I feel
Remember
like
I said that.
I feel like comparing him to Bret Hart it's not a stretch. I feel like his style can be applied to a lot of different technical wrestlers.
Yeah. He's a,
And
he's a
and
king
like
of that time.
here's what I mean because if you are trying to have someone be like if you're trying to compare him to somebody, it has to be more than just I think like the technical in-ring style, because I feel like a Bret Hart style can be applied to people like Chris Benoit, uh, Eddie Guerrero, Lance Storm, like people like that, like that have a technical background. Because if I was in that position and someone asked me like this person is a lot like X, Y, and Z, I think it needs to be more than just the technical stuff. Because if we compare Matt Cardona to Bret Hart, character wise, personality wise, I don't
Uh-huh.
personally see a big comparison. You can't have someone who's called the Indie God and the Deathmatch King and then say that he's like Bret Hart, like, you know,
The Hitman.
Canadian, everything's awesome. I hate, you know, how the attitude, like as it was transitioning to the attitude era, what it's become. Like Matt Cardona's character, like I was watching like some of his like death matches and stuff in GCW. Like I can't see Bret Hart like getting hit with a fluorescent bulb and getting his forehead stapled and basically being in like an ECW style match. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
if we're really going like bullet point for bullet point, I can't see that personally.
Yeah.
And this isn't a negative. I also think that Matt Cardona is more charismatic than Bret Hart. So
Oh yeah.
I think Matt Cardona can cut a much better promo than Bret Hart. The thing that I'll give him credit for is he has that technical style and he knows how to put together a match, sell in a match that makes me believe in him in that match. I'll give him that when it comes to Bret Hart. But if we're comparing him to Bret Hart, I don't think that's a fair assessment. But Chris, what do you think?
I mean, depending where Jericho is kind of coming from. I mean, he was coming from like specifically maybe the selling portion, like he said, like meat and potatoes, kind of like strikes and all that kind of stuff. If it was just that specific aspect, I mean, I think he didn't really make it clear. I guess if he was
Mm-hmm.
just saying like overall, yeah, he's kind of like Bret Hart. I mean, I posted that Broken Skull sessions thing last night. I don't know if you guys watched it. Is that was that an old episode or are they just like
Oh yeah,
That
that's
was a
from the
while ago.
vault. No, yeah, that's from the vault.
okay? I didn't see it, but yeah, I mean that specific match, Stone Cold versus Bret Hart. I mean everything looked very solid and strikes were really believable. So I think Matt Cardona has a lot of that, but over besides that, personalities are different. His approach overall, obviously with the deathmatch stuff, Bret Hart did not do and probably would not do. Um, so yeah, I would just say it depends on the context. So depending what Jericho, from at least what how he said the meat and potato stuff, so strikes and probably the selling overall, how he took a bump. I could see that.
Mm-hmm. Andres, do you have any thoughts like from his Edgehead days, all from Z True Long Island Story YouTube channel days to Indie God Matt Cardona, always ready? Do you feel like there are anything? Do you think there's anything valid from
Hmm.
Jericho's comment about him being like Bret Hart?
I mean, honestly, like I didn't really follow Matt Cardona all that much. Only when he was like Zack Ryder did I really see a lot of him. I mean, obviously because he was on WWE at the time, but I
Right.
mean, as an in-ring performer, I mean, yeah, he's pretty solid and he's a good worker. He's good at making his opponents look good. He's good at making himself look good. He was a pretty good in-ring performer. I mean, overall, like just a solid package. So like, but like the comparison when I heard that, I was like, huh, like what did he mean by that exactly? Because yeah, like you get to your point, like it's a very different character versus you know Bret
Yeah.
Hart. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but I mean, in the context of like a workhorse, like good worker and all that, yeah, definitely. I mean, when we saw him live, I mean, it was a good match overall. I was actually happy to actually see him again for the first time in a long time,
Hmm.
and it was a nice good reminder to see like how good he actually was in person too.
He's also
So,
great at reading a crowd too. I think he's really
oh
good
yeah,
because
he was
not
pretty
every
interactive with us. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, because like There are some wrestlers that I don't know if they're too nervous or they get too much in their heads. They just kind of like do the match and do the flippy shit or whatever, do their submissions, tap out or whatever. But a key ingredient if you want to be a great pro wrestler is you have to pay attention to the crowd. If you hear them chanting or doing something, I think reacting to it, doing something with that really adds to the match. Like, so that's what Matt Cardona is really good at. And yeah, I agree. And again, like I think he said like he wouldn't do like a moonsault flip, sure, but I mean he would do almost everything else. I mean, like I said, like those death matches. I mean, like okay, you don't always do a moonsault, but you'll go through like a table, you'll get stapled in the head, blades, razors.
That's different.
And what's the one where like the leg up, where you jump up and go forward? Is that a Faymaster, or is that from behind when you have like the single leg that goes into your opponent?
Like you're doing a big leg drop on their head, like as they're falling with you.
Well, it's not. It's not. The person isn't lying down. Your opponent is standing up, and then your leg is going into their head, like the single leg. And I don't remember if that's called a Faymaster or not, but
No,
it's.
Famous is the other way.
They're behind.
Different direction, yeah.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like Zack Ryder, Matt Cardona, whatever you want to call him, he does that, and Bret Hart, I don't think would do that either. So, I mean, the other thing, I mean, I guess he is Canadian by proxy because he's married to Chelsea Green, and she's from Canada. So I guess if you want to say he's like Bret Hart, he's kind of Canadian, half Canadian, even though he's from New York.
I'll add one more thing. Bret Hart mentioned to Stone Cold how he would do pretty much any job. He was referencing to the screw job. Like he would do essentially any job for anybody if it came down to it, just for the good of the business. And I think that's kind of Matt Cardona's more or less position, because I mean he's around everywhere doing whatever and doing all these matches.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see that too.
Point. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's another thing. So it makes his comment a little more valid. I mean, Matt Cardona's current motto is always ready. I did watch his AEW interview with RJ City. That was great. He poked fun at him of his action figure collection. I mean, Matt Cardona is a genuine fanboy of wrestling. Like he's legit. Like he's not just like doing it for the paycheck, like Goldberg just got into it. Like Matt Cardona is like, if a fan in the internet wrestling community became a wrestler, I feel like Matt Cardona is like that. And he just seems like a genuinely cool guy. I mean, him and Chelsea Green, the thing that I hope to see at the Royal Rumble is a Matt Cardona return, and I want him to be paired with Chelsea Green again, like he was in TNA. I think, like, just thinking about that, when in their current like career positions or roles, like she's a current champ, and I'll talk more about her at our year in review in 2024. But they are in such different positions right now. If you put them together, I think they will be absolute money in 2025. So I really hope, now that Triple H has basically had the full reins for, I think this year was like his first full year as control of creative, because WrestleMania 39 was still kind of half Vince. WrestleMania 40 was like Triple H's actual baby thing. So his first full year in creative, I hope we see Matt Cardona back at WWE, but we'll see.
Don't gaslight yourself like every other fan.
Hey, I'm gonna hype myself up. I don't care. That's what makes things fun about wrestling. We like to speculate. We like to build up our own scenarios in our head, get excited, and then get disappointed when it doesn't happen. But
it was supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly. As long as you can ground yourself and know that you yourself were gassing yourself up and you're not blaming somebody else, then I think it's healthy and fair. But I want to get into our next segment.